It was a normal morning at Hillridge High School. Students rushed through the halls, laughing and shouting. Teachers walked past with papers in their hands, but no one noticed the quiet man in the corner cleaning the floor. His name was Mr. Kareem. He wore old brown shoes, a faded blue shirt, and carried a mop in his hand. His back was slightly bent from years of work. Every day, he cleaned the floors, emptied the trash, and fixed broken lights. Most students didn't even know his name. They just called him the janitor. "Hey, watch out, mop man!" one student shouted as he almost slipped. "Careful," another girl laughed. "He might clean your brains too." The group laughed loudly as Mr. Kareem slowly stepped aside, saying nothing. He just gave a small smile and kept mopping the floor. Some teachers didn't treat him any better. One teacher once told him, "Please stay out of the teacher's lounge, sir. It's only for staff." Mr. Kareem nodded quietly and left without saying a word. To them, he was just an old man with no education, just someone who cleaned. But Mr. Kareem didn't complain. He came early every day. He cleaned every corner. He fixed things when no one else could. He smiled when people were rude. No one saw the pain behind his quiet eyes. No one knew his story. One day, something unexpected happened. There was a special event at the school, a World Cultures Day. A famous speaker was supposed to come and talk to the students. Chairs were set up in the auditorium. Students and teachers filled the room, waiting. But then, the principal walked on stage looking nervous. "I'm very sorry," she said, "but our guest speaker couldn't make it today. He missed his flight. We have no one to speak." "Yeah." Students groaned. Some got ready to leave. Then a calm voice came from the back of the room. "Maybe I could speak." Everyone turned to look. It was Mr. Kareem. He stood by the door, still wearing his janitor's uniform, holding a small notebook in his hand. The room went silent for a moment. Then the laughter began. "You speak?" a student said loudly. "This should be fun," another joked. The principal looked confused. "Mr. Kareem, are you sure?" He nodded slowly. "Only if you'll allow me." The principal didn't know what to say. She looked at the teachers. Some shrugged. Finally, she said, "All right, you may speak for a few minutes." Mr. Kareem walked slowly to the stage. Students whispered and giggled. Some even pulled out their phones to record. He stood at the center of the stage and looked at the crowd. His face was calm. His eyes were kind. He opened his notebook but didn't read from it. "I know most of you don't know me," he began in a clear voice. "Some of you laugh when you see me. Some of you think I'm not smart, just a janitor." The room became quiet. The giggles stopped. "But let me ask you something," he said. "What makes a person smart? Is it the clothes they wear? The job they do? Or the words they speak?" The students listened. He had their attention now. "I come from a land far away," he said, "a place with a long history and deep knowledge. Before I came here, I worked in a university. I taught young people just like you. I studied language, history, and culture. I have read books in 5 languages. But here, I clean floors." A teacher gasped softly. A student whispered, "Wait, what?" "I lost my home. I lost my family. I came to this country with nothing. I took this job to survive. Not because I'm uneducated, but because life is not always fair." Now the room was completely silent. Mr. Kareem continued, "You laughed at me because you only saw the outside. But inside I carry a library of knowledge, a mountain of pain, and a heart full of hope." He paused. Then he smiled. "Never judge someone by their job or their clothes. You never know what story they carry inside." He stepped back from the microphone. No one moved. No one clapped. They just stared at him, shocked, silent, and changed. Then, slowly, a girl in the front row stood up. She began clapping. Then another. And another. Soon, The whole room was on their feet. Mr. Kareem nodded and walked off the stage without a word. That day, Hill Ridge High School saw the janitor for who he truly was, and nothing would ever be the same again. After the assembly, no. One could stop talking about Mr. Kareem. He spoke like a professor. Did you hear how many languages he knows? Is he really just a janitor? The students were shocked. The teachers were confused. Even the principal was speechless. For the first time, people looked at Mr. Kareem with respect. That afternoon, he walked down the hall holding his mop. But this time, no one laughed. No one joked. Some students even moved out of the way to let him pass. A few smiled. One student quietly said, "Thank you for your words, sir." Mr. Kareem nodded kindly and continued his work. But inside, something had changed. For many years, he had hidden his story. Now it was out, and the school wanted to know more. The next morning, a teacher named Mrs. Harris came to find him. "Mr. Kareem," she said softly, Would you mind talking to my class today? They have questions. They want to hear more." He looked at her for a moment, then nodded. "If they are ready to listen, I will speak." At 10 a.m., he walked into room 12. The students were already seated, eyes wide, notebooks open. One boy raised his hand. "Sir, were you really a professor?" Mr. Kareem smiled. "Yes, I taught at a university in Damascus." Another student asked, "What did you teach?" "Language, history, and philosophy," he said. "I loved teaching, but when war came, I lost everything." A girl in the back asked, "Did you leave because of the war?" He nodded. "Yes, my home was bombed. I lost my wife, my daughter disappeared. I had to run. I came here alone." The room went still. No one laughed. No one whispered. Mr. Kareem continued, "When I arrived in this country, I didn't speak English well. I had no money, no papers. No one would hire me as a teacher. So I took this job, a janitor." The students listened carefully. One girl whispered, "That's not fair." "No," Mr. Kareem said gently, "but life is not always fair. Still, I am grateful. I am safe. I can work. And I can still teach, like I am doing now." A boy raised his hand. "Why didn't you tell anyone before?" Mr. Kareem looked at him. "Because most people don't ask janitors about their past. They only see the broom, not the story." After that day, Mr. Kareem was invited to speak in more classrooms. Every time, students listened with respect. He told them about the beauty of Syria, his homeland. He described ancient libraries, busy marketplaces, and his quiet university office filled with books. He spoke about his daughter, who loved books like he did. He showed them a small photo, worn, faded, but still clear. A little girl smiling with 2 missing teeth. "I don't know if she's alive," he said once, his voice low, "but I still hope." That day, many students cried. One afternoon, the principal called him to her office. "Mr. Kareem," she said kindly, "you've changed this school. The students are different now. They talk about respect, about kindness, about not judging people." He said nothing, just listened. She added, "We want to offer you a part-time teaching role, just 1 class to start. Will you accept?" "Mr." Kareem smiled, but his eyes were wet. "Yes," he said, "I would be honored." Later that evening, he sat in his small apartment. On the table were 2 things, his janitor's mop and an old leather notebook filled with lesson plans from long ago. He opened the notebook and read quietly. Then he picked up a pen and began to write again. The teacher inside him had returned. At school, a group of students made a sign, "Mr. Kareem, the janitor who opened our minds." They placed it near the main hallway, right where he always mopped the floor, and from that day on, no one ever looked at Mr. Kareem the same way again. Mr. Kareem's first class was on a rainy Wednesday morning. Room 8 was full. Every seat was taken. Students who never liked history were now sitting quietly, waiting for him to speak. Even a few teachers came in to listen from the back of the room. Mr. Kareem walked in wearing the same clothes, plain shirt, dark pants, old shoes. He carried only a book and a piece of chalk. "Good morning," he said calmly. "Let us begin." He didn't use a projector. He didn't have slides. He simply spoke, and the room stayed silent. He told them stories about ancient cities, lost languages, and great thinkers who once lived and died without fame. His words painted pictures in their minds. His voice was calm but strong. His eyes were full of memories. A boy whispered to his friend, "He's better than our real teachers." After class, a student named Lena followed him to the hallway. "Sir," she asked softly, "can I ask something?" "Of course," he said kindly. "You speak so well, and your stories are so deep. What happened to you? Why did you stop teaching?" Mr. Kareem looked at her for a moment. Then he sat down on a bench and motioned for her to sit too. "It is a long story," he said. "I want to hear it," Lena replied. He nodded and began. "Many years ago," Mr. Kareem said, "I was a teacher at a university in Damascus. I had a beautiful home, many books, and a happy family. My wife was kind, and my daughter was full of life. I was proud of my work. I gave lectures to hundreds of students. Some of them became doctors, some writers, some teachers like me." He paused, his eyes looking far away. But then, the war came. First, the power cuts, then the bombings. One night, everything changed. I came home and found my house destroyed. My wife was gone. My daughter was missing. Lena covered her, mouth in shock. "I'm so sorry." Mr. Kareem nodded slowly. "I searched for them for weeks. No answers, no signs, just smoke, dust, and pain." He continued, "I tried to speak out against the violence. I thought my voice would help. I was wrong. One day I was warned, leave now or disappear." Mr. Kareem had become a quiet hero at Hillridge High School. Students now waved at him in the hallway. Teachers invited him for coffee in the lounge. He still worked as a janitor, but also taught one history class a week. And every time he spoke, the room stayed silent as if the world paused to listen. But Mr. Kareem carried something no one else knew about. A folder. Old, brown, and worn out, this folder had been in his backpack since the day he arrived in the country. He never showed it to anyone, not even the principal, not even when people started respecting him. It held something from his past, something powerful, something he wasn't ready to share. Until now. One Friday morning, while cleaning the teacher's lounge, Mr. Kareem overheard a conversation. "I don't understand the hype," said Mr. Collins, frowning. "He's just a janitor who tells stories." "But he's helping the students think differently," replied Mrs. Harris. "They're actually excited to learn." Collins shook his head. "Stories are not enough. Where's the proof? Anyone can say they were a professor." Mr. Kareem didn't say a word. He quietly finished wiping the counter and left. But that night, in his small apartment, he sat at his desk and opened the old folder. Inside were papers, yellow with age, written in Arabic and English, letters, certificates, a photo of him in a classroom with smiling students, a university seal. At the bottom was a letter with a government stamp. It was his teaching license, approved, respected, and once highly valued. He looked at it for a long time. Then, for the first time in years, he decided to bring the folder with him to school. On Monday, he entered his classroom quietly. The students noticed the folder in his hand. "Sir," one asked, "what's that?" Mr. Kareem smiled. "Today I will not teach. Today I will tell you something I've never shared before." The class leaned forward. He opened the folder. "This," he said, "is the last piece of my old life." He pulled out the first document, A certificate in both Arabic and English. It says I earned my PhD in historical studies, he explained. I studied civilizations, languages, and conflict resolution. He passed it around. The students stared at it in shock. This one, he said, holding up another paper, is my teaching license. It allowed me to teach in 2 countries. I was once invited to speak at international conferences. He showed the photo of his university days. In it, he looked younger, smiling, standing in front of a blackboard with students all around him. A girl whispered, "You were really a professor." He nodded. "Yes. And for a long time I tried to forget this folder, because every time I looked at it, it reminded me of what I lost." He paused. "But now, I think it's time people know that even if a candle is hidden, it still burns." Word spread fast. By the next day, the principal had called him in. "Mr. Kareem," she said, holding the documents he shared, I don't know what to say. This is extraordinary." He simply smiled. "I'm so sorry," she added. "You should have been teaching full-time, not cleaning floors." "I never wanted pity," Mr. Kareem replied. "I only wanted to help." She looked at him with tears in her eyes. "You've done more than help. You've changed us." The school board was called in. After reviewing his documents and hearing his story, they made a decision. By the end of the week, Mr. Kareem was officially offered a full-time teaching job at Hillridge High. He would no longer carry a mop. He would carry chalk and books, once again. But not everyone was happy. Mr. Collins still doubted him. "Documents can be fake," he whispered to another teacher. But the students didn't care. To them, Mr. Kareem was not just a teacher. He was a lesson in pain, in strength, in dignity. Outside room 8, someone pinned a new poster on the wall. He was never just a janitor. He was a warrior of knowledge. Mr. Kareem stood in front of his new class the next Monday, this time in a crisp shirt and tie. The same eyes that once ignored him now looked at him with deep respect. "Good morning," he said, as always. "Let us begin." But before he spoke, a student raised her hand. "Sir," she said, "thank you for not giving up." He paused, smiled, and replied, "Thank you for finally seeing me." Mr. Kareem's life had changed. He was no longer just the janitor. Now he was a full-time history teacher at Hillridge High. His new classroom had clean whiteboards, smart screens, and rows of eager students who actually wanted to learn. But while students admired him, not everyone did. One person still watched him closely. Mr. Collins believed Mr. Kareem didn't belong there. In his eyes, no man should go from mopping floors to teaching in classrooms just like that. One day in the staff room, Collins said to a group of teachers, "A certificate from another country means nothing here. He never passed our system." Mrs. Harris replied, "But the students are learning more from him than anyone else." Still, Collins was not convinced. So he decided to challenge Mr. Kareem in front of the whole school. A week later, the school announced a history debate competition. It was open to all students, but the judges would be 3 teachers. To everyone's surprise, Mr. Collins stood up in the meeting and said, "Mr. Kareem and I will also each give a short lecture at the end. Let's see which one the students understand better." Mr. Kareem looked at him calmly. "I don't wish to compete," he said kindly. "This is about learning, not proving." But Collins smiled and said, "Exactly. Let's help the students learn what quality teaching really looks like." The room went quiet. Mr. Kareem nodded slowly. "Then I will speak. Not to win, but to share." Over the next few days, students prepared their debate speeches. Topics included ancient civilizations, wars, peace treaties, and the role of leadership in history. Behind the scenes, Collins worked hard on his lecture. He made slides, memorized facts, and even added jokes to impress the audience. Mr. Kareem, on the other hand, prepared something different. He wrote his speech by hand. No slides, no fancy visuals, just words and truth. The day of the competition arrived. The school auditorium was packed. Teachers, students, and even parents had come to watch. The student debates went well. Everyone clapped. But the room grew tense when it was time for the teacher lectures. Collins went first. He stood confidently. Using the projector and graphs, he threw in big words, geopolitical structures, post-colonial analysis, intercontinental diplomacy. Some students nodded. Others looked confused. He ended with a forced smile and said, "That, my friends, is how history truly works." Polite applause followed. Then it was Mr. Kareem's turn. He walked to the center of the stage with nothing in his hands. He looked at the students. Slowly, calmly. Then he began. "I was 10 years old when I first heard the word war," he said. "My teacher told us that history is written by those who survive." He paused. "Many years later, I lived through war. I saw buildings fall. I saw people run. I saw silence take over places that once had life." The room grew still. "I want you to understand something," he continued. "History is not just about facts. It is about people, pain, choices, and the way we rise again." He spoke for 7 minutes. No notes, no screen, just his voice and his memories. And when he stopped speaking, the room didn't move. Then, one student stood and clapped, then another and another. Soon, the whole auditorium was filled with the sound of applause. After the event, the principal asked the students, "Whose words stayed in your heart today?" Almost every hand pointed to Mr. Kareem. Mr. Collins said nothing. He left the stage quietly, but the students noticed something. That day, Mr. Kareem had won, not a contest, but their trust again. Later that evening, a student left a note on Mr. Kareem's desk. "You don't teach history. You make us feel it." Mr. Kareem read it, closed his eyes, and smiled. But deep down, he knew one thing. Respect can be earned, but it must also be protected. And the biggest test was still to come. Mr. Kareem was now a favorite at Hillridge High. His class was always full. Even students who once hated history now looked forward to it. Parents thanked him at school events. Some even asked if he could tutor their children. But respect, real respect, is not just about how many people clap for you. Sometimes it's tested in silence. And that test was coming. One Monday morning, Mr. Kareem arrived early. The halls were quiet except for the sound of his shoes and the hum of the lights. As he walked past the office, he saw the principal speaking with a man in a black suit. The man stared at him. Later, during break time, the principal called him in. "Mr. Kareem," she said gently, "this is Mr. Rowland from the district education office." Rowland shook his hand. "You've made quite the impression here." Mr. Kareem nodded politely. "But," Rowland added, "there's been a concern." The air turned still. Rowland placed a file on the desk. "We received an anonymous complaint," he said. "It says your documents may not be valid, that you're not really qualified." Mr. Kareem's face remained calm, but inside, something sank. "I understand," he replied quietly. "We're not accusing you," Rowland continued, "but we must verify everything. Until then, we're placing you on leave." The room fell silent. "For how long?" Mr. Kareem asked. "Until we finish our investigation." That afternoon, students walked into room 8 and saw a note on the board. "Class is canceled until further notice. Mr. Kareem." They were confused, angry, hurt. What happened? Where is he? Why would they stop his class? By lunch, the rumors had started, and by evening, one name came up again and again: Mr. Collins. Some students said they saw him talking to Rowland weeks before. Others said he had been asking strange questions about Kareem's papers, but no one could prove. It. It had been 6 months since Mr. Kareem returned to the classroom. His story had touched not just Hillridge High, but the whole town. Some news channels even called him the Janitor Professor, but to his students he was simply Sir Room. 8, once ignored and quiet, had now become the most popular room in the school. Students would peek through the windows just to hear him speak. Parents requested to meet him. Teachers began using his lessons as examples, and something else happened too. The school offered Mr. Kareem a new title, head of the history department, but he kindly refused. "I'm happy where I am," he said. Close to the students, close to the chalkboard. One cold morning, as snow lightly fell outside, Mr. Kareem arrived early to set up his classroom. He placed a quote on the board, something simple yet deep. True power is not in loud voices, but in quiet truth. When students walked in, they paused. They read the quote. Then they looked at him. He smiled and said, "Today's lesson is not in your textbook." He picked up a small wooden box and placed it on the desk. "In this box," he said, "are letters. Some from my past students, some from my time before this country, and one I wrote last night." He pulled out a paper and began to read. To the student who feels invisible, to the boy who thinks he's not smart enough, to the girl who stays quiet in the back row. I see you. I was once like you. He paused. I cleaned floors not because I was weak, but because life knocked me down. But I stood back up, not to prove anything, but because truth always rises. He folded the letter and placed it back in the box. There was silence in the room. Some students had tears in their eyes. One of them asked, "Sir, why did you write that letter now?" Mr. Kareem looked at the boy and said, "Because I will not always be here, but I want my voice to stay." Later that week, something surprising happened. The school held a special assembly, not for awards or announcements, but to honor Mr. Kareem. The principal stood on stage and said, "He entered our school with a mop. Today, he leaves with our respect." The students were confused. Leaves! Mr. Kareem walked to the microphone, calm and composed. "My dear students," he began, "this will be my last week at Hillridge High." Gasps filled the room. "But why?" someone shouted. He smiled. "Because I have been invited to teach at a college where future teachers are trained. Now, I will not just teach students. I will teach the people who will one day teach you." The room went quiet. Then, a slow clap began, and soon the whole hall stood up. A standing ovation, not for a man who taught history, but for a man who became history. On his last day, students filled room 8 with goodbye cards, thank you notes, and small gifts. But Mr. Kareem left them with something too. On every desk, he placed a small white card with one sentence: "Your story is not over. Keep writing." As he walked out of the school for the final time, he turned and looked at the building. He had once entered through the back door, carrying a mop. Now he left through the front gates, carrying love, respect, and legacy. 2 years later, room 8 still had a poster on the wall. He wasn't just a janitor, he was the light in our dark. And every year, on the first day of school, the new history teacher would tell the same story about a man with quiet eyes, a worn-out folder, and a heart full of truth. Because some voices never fade. They echo forever. It had been 15 years since Mr. Kareem left Hillridge High. Time had changed the school. The walls had new paint. There were new computers, new students, and new teachers. But room 8 still carried his spirit. The desk he once used now belonged to a young woman, Ms. Layla. She was new, passionate, and full of ideas. On her first day, she stood in front of the class and said, "History isn't about memorizing names. It's about learning how we became who we are." The students liked her immediately. but they didn't know her secret. That evening, after her first class, Ms. Layla stayed behind. She opened the bottom drawer of the desk and pulled out an old wooden box. It was still there. Inside it were faded, letters one by one, with names and dates, and on top was a card that said, "To the one who comes after me, carry the light forward." Mr. Kareem Layla smiled. A small tear rolled down her cheek, because she was one of his students. She had been just 12 years old when she sat in that very classroom, feeling lost, invisible, and unsure of herself. Mr. Kareem saw her. And now, she was back, not as a student, but as a teacher. That week, she told her class about him, about the janitor who taught truth, the man who reminded the world that greatness wears no uniform. And when she finished, a student in the back whispered, "Will we ever meet him?" Layla looked out the window, smiled, and said, "You already have. Every time you believe in someone others ignore, you meet him again. Some stories don't end. They become a legacy. And Mr. Kareem's story, it lives on, in every classroom, where truth speaks louder than titles, in every student who dares to dream, and in every teacher who remembers. It's not where you start, it's what you carry forward."